introduce Dr. Grace Johns to give a very brief overview of the Biscayne Bay economic study. As you've all heard over the course of the morning, this is a very, very valuable resource, 64 billion. And in 2005, I met Dr. Johns, who conducted that study and gave a value to the Bay because we felt it was important for Biscayne Bay to have a price tag so that we can actually take that information and use it for advocacy. So putting a price tag, and you take that to Tallahassee, you take that to Congress, and it makes a difference. And that's why economic studies are important. With that, Dr. Johns, take it away.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll get started right away. In this particular study, we looked at the economic contribution of recreation, commercial fishing, commercial shipping and cruise operations at the Port of Miami. And we also looked at the impact of the Bay and the Miami River on property values. This is, as you know, a picture of the Bay. We spent most of our budget conducting the in-person recreation surveys where we surveyed residents and visitors in Miami-Dade County. We focused on the areas surrounding the county, and we made sure that the activities that they said they participated in when they were recreating on the Bay were actually in the Bay and not part of the Atlantic Ocean. That was one of the most important parts of the study, is we didn't get the two confused to the survey researcher. We also asked them, they had to only talk about their recreational uses and expenditures over the past 12 months. And we surveyed over 1,700 people in Miami-Dade County from over a 10-month period, from July 2022 to August 2023. And with that, also, I'm going to give a shout out. If you want to know much more than what I'm telling you now and how we did what we did, this report is on the Miami-Dade County website. But I know that I'm not teaching a class here, but whenever I see economic studies of anything really, the economists tend to not really define what they mean by economic value. And so I want to make it very clear that these are the economic terms that we use in this study. We look at output, which is the value of the additional goods and services produced in the study area, which is Dade County, because of the uses of the Bay. We look at income, which includes the labor, proprietors, and other property type income, including dividends and rents and profits generated as a result of the Bay-related uses. We look at the number of full and part-time jobs generated by Bay uses, and we look at all of the forms of tax revenue generated as well. Okay, here's the answer in a nutshell. We have the economic contribution itemized by activity type. It's a snapshot of how the Bay affected the economy in the year 2022, and it's in 2022 dollars. So for recreation, we found that it generated over $15 billion in output to the economy, $8.2 billion in income. That's what the people of Miami-Dade County got to keep because of the recreation associated with Biscayne Bay. And it employed 113,300 people. And it generated a tax revenue of $2.3 billion. And this is just in 1 year. Commercial fishing was a bit smaller at $19 million in output, $12 million in income, 200 in jobs, and $2.7 million in tax revenue. Now, the Port of Miami shipping and cruising, that was provided to us by Port of Miami because they had just recently completed their economic contribution. And this dollar value of output, income, employment, and tax revenue includes not only what was generated because of the activities at the port, but also the economic activity generated by the companies that ship their goods through into and out of Port Miami. So that's why it's so huge. It's $49 billion in output. The people of Miami-Dade County got to keep $15 billion of that money, and it employed 334,000 Miami-Dade County residents and generated $1.8 billion in tax revenue. We were not able to do Miami River shipping. But we do advocate that that be looked at in the future. We looked at the impact on property values. I put it in this table, although I talk about it separately in a minute, that I put it as annual income because that is the annual real value that people place on being able to live on or near Biscayne Bay and the Miami River. And it totals $240 million a year. And that is probably an underestimate because we only looked at the value to properties within 1/3 of a mile from Biscayne Bay. So the total value you can see is where you get this, the vaunted 63 or $64 billion in output, $23 billion in total income, almost 500,000 jobs, and $4 billion in tax revenue associated with the Bay. The next slide shows the Bay as a percent of the economy, which I think is a very interesting table. It shows that recreation alone is responsible for about 5% of Miami-Dade County's economy. Think about that. Just Biscayne Bay and recreation on the Bay is responsible for 5% of Miami-Dade County's economy. Commercial fishing, a lot less than 1%. The Port Miami activities, about 8 to 15% of the economy. And overall, the Bay contributes about 19, it depends on if you want to look at income, 13% of income, 19% of output. So this is a very significant development. As you know, Miami-Dade County is the largest county in Florida. So if these numbers are big, not just for Miami-Dade County, but for the rest of Florida as well. We did look at the individual uses of Biscayne Bay, and I was shocked to see that cleaning up the Bay was like much larger than it's ever been before that we've ever estimated. Where did cleaning up the Bay go on here? It was significant. It was larger than I expected. It's on this list somewhere. Viewing the Bay so if you look at, we included viewing the Bay from shore on here because that is a very important activity associated with the Bay. A lot of people come to restaurants and shopping and the culture events, the science museum, because the Bay is there, because it's a beautiful place to go and relax and have some good time. So we estimate a total of 69 million person days were spent viewing the Bay from shore. These are just the days where the person only viewed the Bay from shore. All of these activities here, which we total to be 120 million person days, is just the primary recreation activity that day. Because we all know that people can participate in more than one activity in a day, and we just picked their primary recreation activity, so we didn't double count. So the total is 120 million person days, and then the rest of the activities totaled 51 million person days in 2022, which is substantial. Now, let me show you this one. I love this one. Now, this is a time series, and this will be my last slide because she wants me to hurry up. This is a time series of how resilient Biscayne Bay is. If you look at the first bump, if you look from left to right, I don't know if you can see the years. The first bump happens in 2008. And what was in 2008? The Great Recession. And then it fell and then stayed low, but it picked up a bit. And then it really went gangbusters until Hurricane Irma hit, and then it dropped. And then it started coming back up again. And then COVID-19 hit. And now look at the slope of that line between COVID and now. It's incredible. So it just shows you how resilient and how beloved Biscayne Bay is. And so one last thing, I'll just flip a little bit. Just one more thing, the Bay and property values. So we were able to demonstrate that Biscayne Bay is responsible for a total of $8 billion in additional property values associated with the Bay. That's $8 billion, which is roughly about 20% of the market value of these properties, and which varies depending on where you are on the Bay. And that annualizes to $240 million a year. And that's where we get that number from. So that $240 million a year is the annual willingness to pay of people to live on or near the Bay. And then I just want to give a shout out. Irela is absolutely right. I've been doing this for 40 years. And one of the reasons why I do this is because nobody can see the economic value of these natural resources unless you actually do a study and you highlight it and you distribute the results and you make sure it's a damn good study so that nobody can say that it's a bunch of, crap. So that ends my presentation. This has been distributed and talked about in many venues, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after, in the break or whenever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johns. Again, how important this resource is to our local economy, our state economy. It is my pleasure to introduce our following panel discussion, Governance and a Resilient Biscayne Bay. I have the pleasure of having worked with, I think, every single one of our panelists in some form or fashion, but always related to Biscayne Bay. And I will call you all up. State Senator Alexis Calatayud from the 38th District. And I believe your entire district encompasses the Bay, right? Yeah. So there it is. You can't get more passionate than that. Next, we have one of my, I can't say favorites, but it's been such a thrill to work with County Commissioner Danielle Cohen Higgins, who's also the chair of our Biscayne Bay Watershed Management Advisory Board, leading on so many efforts from our water resources, water quality, our reasonable assurance plan, to protecting our urban development boundary. She is a champion, and we're really grateful to have you on this panel. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Next, we have, I can say this, I'll say one of my favorite mayors. Local governments are essential, and I gotta say that Mayor Omar Nickerson has been a champion of the Bay since that fish kill when we met, and we said we gotta do something about it, and sure as hell we have. So come on up, Mr. Mayor. Next, we have someone that I talked to quite a bit. Actually, I talked to both of you quite a bit, the two Adams. We have Adam Gelber, who's representing the Department of Interior. He is the manager of Everglades projects. And God, we've been talking about Biscayne Bay from the SERP perspective for so long. And I guess we'll keep talking about SERP for quite some more time because it's taking a while. And last but not least, a partner who has been instrumental in a lot of the work that we've been doing since the fish kill is Deputy Secretary of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, who's also here celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Aquatic Preserve, Mr. Adam Blalock. I was confused with both Adams. So I just want to give you all a quick, because we're running really behind, a quick opportunity to talk about what gives you the passion to continue to lead when it comes to Biscayne Bay recovery efforts. I'll start with the senator.
Hey, everybody. I think the most exciting part of championing Biscayne Bay is that you are touching so many different parts of Miamians' lives, whether that's the economic impact that makes upward mobility possible for our community, that makes Florida's budget, that makes so many other projects possible. The impact of Biscayne Bay is so far reaching. It's easy to make an argument in the state legislature, right? Not even in our community, to our community stakeholders, but to people who don't live here, people who have interests and money going other places, that this is a driver for the future of Florida. This is the economic base for the present of Florida. So it's easy work.
Thanks. Really quick. Just reflecting. Thank you for taking the first opportunity to respond to the question. It's always a difficult one because I get time to reflect back to my time, 1974, first time on the Bay, right? It's 4 years old. Living and spending time over and under the water here in Biscayne Bay, seeing its change and seeing the rapid where we are today of where it used to be, but knowing that we have we have the opportunity to return back to where it once was and get back there is what keeps me excited about it. There's a lot of great things about the Bay, and without a healthy Bay, it's really the sign of what's going on the land. And so that's what keeps me excited about, pressing forward with restoration.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Danielle Cohen Higgins. I'm a county commissioner, District 8. And to answer the question about what keeps me passionate about the Bay, in my opinion, it's probably my kids. And by my kids, I mean the next generation. Being born and raised here in Miami-Dade County, the Bay has always been a part of my life. And watching the changes that have happened in a relatively short period of time concerns me greatly about the experience that my children will have and their children will have in enjoying and experiencing Biscayne Bay. So for me, it's about preserving as much as we can for ourselves, for our children, and for generations to come. And it's why I'm so thrilled to see such a large crowd at our Biscayne Bay Summit, which means that the word is getting out, it's spreading, people are plugging in and understanding what a precious resource and asset this is, and shows all of us that we are amongst a very large community of people that continues to grow and trying to protect and preserve Biscayne Bay.
Thank you. I'm Adam Blalock at Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And so, we work on water quality, statewide, but when I started in 2020, it was pretty soon after that there was the fish kill in Biscayne Bay, and seeing all of the environmental issues and concerns that were going on, and then seeing the response from local governments, stakeholders, NGOs, the legislature and the governor, and being able to work in an agency where seeing the response to that and the funding that was tied to that the governor in his recommended budget for the last 4 years has put $20 million specifically just to Biscayne Bay, and the legislature has been very supportive of that as well, and seeing additional projects and just getting to work with Miami-Dade County on identifying what are the best uses of that funding and what we can do to try to address some of the nutrient and stormwater issues. And so just being able to play, somewhat of a role in trying to prevent those type of environmental issues from, occurring again. And I feel like we're starting to make progress, and just the education and outreach that we're seeing and the response around the whole community. So it's really just been a pleasure to get to work in that role.
How's everybody doing? I really think that what's really important is that, we've heard for a long time that there's more money at the state level for, environmental projects, environmental causes than ever before. I think that we really need to continue this momentum, because what's going to happen is, a lot of times, and we all know this in government, there'll be something where they do a meeting, or there's a conference, or there's a task force, and they might meet like 3 times, and then it just kind of like dies out. But if we don't, that's why it's so good to see this. And it's good to see that in the past like 3-4 years, we have had momentum that is continuous. Because if not, we'll look up and it will be 15-20 years from now, and you'll hear the little conversations of, man, remember like back when it was like 20 years ago and there was all that money in the budget for all these projects, but yet nobody took advantage of it, and yet it'll still be the same type of thing. And so one thing government can't do, no matter what, we can't do what a lot of time government has done in the past, where it's like we meet to talk about stuff and take pictures, and then 5 years later we'll meet to talk about the same thing we talked about 5 years ago. So I think that's very important.
That was great. And that's why effective governance is so important, and permanent governance with regards to Biscayne Bay was a big priority when we established the Biscayne Bay Watershed Management Advisory Board, because we had an advisory board back in the 80s, and that was sunsetted for what political reasons, whatever. That's what Harvey Rubin told me. He had established that, and the Bay was doing fine when there was oversight and accountability, but that went away. And then all of a sudden, what happens? We're back to square one, kind of like Groundhog Day that we heard earlier this morning. And so, but on the funding side, I'll start with Senator Calatayud. We're so grateful again for the state's support, the governor's support, all the funding for Biscayne Bay I never thought in a million years we would be getting consistent funding just for Biscayne Bay. So in the last 3 years have been instrumental, getting those shovels in the ground and really getting those things that we've been talking about all morning going. So on that note, we know that to see real restoration results, we're going to need a long-term partnership with the state. That's a fact. So what can we do as a coalition to continue these investments so that we can have a recurring funding source of sorts? And that doesn't mean that the state has to hold the entire bag, because the county does put, when we're funding the entire wrap ourselves. So, you know, we are doing our part, but it would be great to really have a recurring funding source so that we can really, really make a dent in a lot of these nutrient pollution challenges that we're facing.
This is a strong 2 years we're looking at. We're going to have a speaker from Miami-Dade County, and we also have a Senate president that has a great deal of interest in Everglades restoration and water quality. He was chair of the Resiliency Committee in the Senate last year and presided over 8 different sessions in which we were discussing what we were going to do to make Florida more resilient. So much of that time was around water and water quality. And coral reef restoration, I would add. I think we need to lean in on having intentional conversations that have clear vision of what our community wants to do next. And I think that those are conversations that run through advocates, activists, stakeholders, our county partners, our state legislators, to be able to provide on behalf of Miami-Dade County this shared vision to the presiding officers of the state legislature. So I think that's incredibly important for us to get to a place in which we can negotiate an increase above the 20 million that we're currently seeing in the budget. I think in addition, it's continue advocating and having conversations within the executive branch for increased support. So that 20 million is a broader conversation even to begin with, that at the start line of the Florida budget, the governor provides recommendations. And then the legislature decides what to do at that point moving forward on how we fund each item. I think we need to also have a meaningful engage in exchange with understanding what is shared vision, not just within the legislative leadership, but executive leadership in Florida, to say, how are we going to move forward the ball? And how do we understand that Miami's unique, even among other regions of the state, not to be one of the others, but to truly understand the unique circumstances we're in and the unique contribution to the state, particularly our water resources provide.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it with the state for a minute. Deputy Secretary, the Biscayne Bay Commission recently developed a strategic plan. So can you share with us some of these strategies that are to be implemented to monitor the progress of Biscayne Bay's recovery, and how the department collaborates with other stakeholders such as illegal dumping, runoff, you know, all the issues that we're faced with on the Bay on a daily basis?
Sure, yeah, thank you. And if I get anything wrong, my fellow commissioner can also chime in. And but yeah, I mean, the Biscayne Bay Commission, you know, it started pretty soon after the Miami-Dade's Biscayne Bay Task Force, and was really an opportunity to bring in state elected officials, local government officials, DEP regulatory folks like myself, representatives from South Florida Water Management District, the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and tried to really have representation across all the different kind of state agencies and local governments that could come together and identify, you know, what can we do to address some of the water quality issues in Biscayne Bay. And so we put together a strategic plan, and it had 3 primary strategies. One was enhancing water quality monitoring, additional and continued public outreach and engagement, and then identifying source and reductions for pollution, primarily nutrients, as we've heard. And one of the things we started to do as we were looking at like water quality monitoring, we see so many entities that are collecting data, you know, the county, universities, the department with the aquatic preserve, and, you know, many more. But all of that data was just kind of being collected by individual entities and no really great way to be able to kind of consolidate all that into a single location where it could really be used and taken advantage of. When we did have the fish kill, you would have to figure out, all right, whose data sensor is in the location, who runs it, where are they keeping the data, so you could go and see, was it DO, was it a temperature? And so we've been working with different stakeholders. I know we had given some funding to FIU, who's kind of pulling in some of that data into their platform, and it's something that we're developing statewide on the Indian River Lagoon, and something that we're looking to also do on Biscayne Bay is really to enhance that water quality monitoring and filling in of data gaps. Because once you understand, what is the current condition, where are the sources, then you can start looking at projects, and that really becomes the key with identifying the reasonable assurance plan. Once you realize and understand where the nutrients are coming from, then you can start prioritizing projects. And that's really the goal, particularly as you're looking at state funding, is where can we start getting the biggest bang for our buck with the amount of nutrients and the amount of projects that we're able to fund, be it septic to sewer or stormwater, and all the various projects that we've heard from today. So that's kind of been where the commission has been going over the last couple of years, and we're continuing to just build upon that as we move forward.
And I may add, the clearinghouse for data was a recommendation from the Biscayne Bay Task Force. So, because without data, we can't really make decisions on where to spend our money. So Commissioner Cohen Higgins, who also serves double duty on the Biscayne Bay Commission, I may add, how do you envision the county's role in the long-term sustainability and governance of Biscayne Bay, particularly balancing the economic development, land use, and environmental protection? And could the Biscayne Bay Watershed Plan meet those goals, help us meet those goals?
So the county's role, I think, is a huge one towards the sustainability of Biscayne Bay on all the levels that your question actually included, in land use and zoning and on the watershed. Miami-Dade County, as you know, we're a huge county. We're 3 million residents, and we don't do this work alone. Obviously, we do this with state and federal partners like the amazing people that are joining us here. But there are other less intuitive votes that we take in Miami-Dade County regarding land use and zoning that may not necessarily immediately register as being consequential to our water quality, i.e. at Biscayne Bay and or the Everglades. And so Miami-Dade County's role is huge because it is at our board that we are making decisions as it pertains to land use and zoning. If we don't have sufficient land in order to complete SERP, for example, our comprehensive Everglades Restoration Program, or to allow this filtration system to work the way that it is intended, it makes it far more difficult for us to protect and preserve Biscayne Bay. And so there have been some significant votes recently. There will likely be more votes coming up in the future. And I think it's incredibly important that while you're plugging into these conferences and learning about Biscayne Bay and doing your part by participating, that you also plug in at the local level and see what kind of votes are being taken to corral and organize your voices when important votes are coming before the board, because it shows an incredible community of people that are plugging in and saying, we're here to protect and preserve Biscayne Bay. We care very much about water quality. We care about the future for our children and for our children's children. And so the county's role is a huge one on a macro perspective, because we are, I always say we're in the middle of two incredible environmental resources, the Everglades and Biscayne Bay. But we're also making decisions that can directly impact the restoration efforts that are taking place in both of these incredible resources. So just stay plugged in. I'm always championing for our water quality. I'm always voting in a way that is going to be consistent with protecting and preserve Biscayne Bay, but I'm one of 13 commissioners. And so your advocacy, your voice, you plugging in and letting everyone know how important these issues are continues to allow us to get the message out that we are all unified on this issue and on this effort, and particularly in this political climate that we all find ourselves in. It's rare that there are issues that everyone unites around. Biscayne Bay and water quality, thankfully, is one of those rare issues where it transcends party lines. It's something everyone can get on the same page. So It's great that the community is growing. Stay plugged in, look out for those votes coming up at the commission when they do come up, and we look forward to your continued advocacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And thank you for what you do. So we're gonna keep it local, Mr. Mayor. So El Portal was one of the municipalities that was pretty much ground zero for the fish kill, if you recall. And so the village has been also challenged with sea level rise and abundance of failing septic systems. How has your community tackled these challenges, and why its coordination with other local governments key to the restoration success, Biscayne Bay?
Yeah, this is big. So when the fish kill happened, I do want to give a shout out to Mayor Latham from North Bay Village, and his son calls me his best mayor friend, because as soon as the fish kill happened, I see Commissioner Stridefield out there. How you doing, sister? But as soon as the fish kill happened, Mayor Latham from North Bay Village, he called me that night. And he said, it was like 9 p.m. He said, "Hey, Mayor, what's going on?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Man, we have to do something about this." And I said, "Yeah, we need to." And he said, "Look, we need to start something that's going to last." And so we started the Coastal Mayors Executive Session. We've had like 6 of these executive sessions. So this is an example of something that we started, didn't just have like 2 meetings and die off. And we're moving on to have our 7th one, and it's been wonderful. And all the different municipalities and the mayors, they share ideas. We come together. She is one of our leaders, and we love her. But what's really, really important, and I think that, you know, we all should really look at this, and shout out to Debbie Griner also from WASD, because she helps us out also. But what's really important is, if you want something to get done, you have to make it a priority. And that's just basically what it is. And so before I was mayor, prior to me becoming mayor, our municipality used to have all type of events. I mean, we had a huge Halloween block party every year. We had all these different cookouts. We had all these different events. And when I became mayor, I was like, we didn't do anything with flood mitigation. We haven't done anything with storm drains. We haven't done anything with septic to sewer. So when I came in, I said, well, we're going to take our resources, and, you know, to all my constituents, we're not partying anymore. There's nothing to party about. So I stopped all of that, and all of our energy and all of our focus goes into infrastructure, because I told my constituents, we have to be the ones to set things up so that 80 years down the line, 100 years down the line, everybody else is okay within our municipality. So somebody has a sacrifice. So it's going to be us. My administration will be the sacrifice. I'll do the boring things. I won't be the mayor who's in front of the camera with all the parties and celebrations. I'll do the boring stuff. But if you really want something done, you have to stay focused on it, and you have to really make it a priority. And that's the only way this stuff is going to get done.
Awesome. All right, so not to leave you hanging out there, Adam, but, you know, Everglades Restoration, as we know, it's taken a while, taken a minute, as the kids say. From the perspective of Everglades Restoration Initiatives, how are these efforts being synergized with Biscayne Bay's recovery to maximize the impact and ensure the long-term sustainability of our water resources and the restoration of our wetlands in Biscayne National Park? I know it's a lot, but
Yeah, I was
So
gonna
is
say,
it-
who wants to unpack that for me?
so is
Please, can I get
Everglades.
some help here? The long-term sustainability, you know, it's great to hear from the mayor, you know, because that's one of the things that concerns me when I look at the central flow path and trying to deal with these trillions of gallons of water is we can do all the right things down the central flow path, but what happens in the built environment could overshadow any good that we do in the central area, which goes back to the point you were talking about looking at development and building all of that. It's great looking out beyond just a 4-year or 8-year cycle. It's looking at a mortgage cycle or 2 mortgage cycles about where we're going to be with that restoration and what benefits are going to come to the park. You know, I forgot to mention earlier, the park is, the Biscayne Bay is phenomenal. right? The resources that are there is worth it, that you all are here to be, you know, in North Bay and get your head underwater and just see a plethora of lobsters, or be down in the crystal clear waters of Biscayne Bay, Biscayne National Park down south, is really what's driving that. So to continue to unpack that restoration feature, it's great to hear that the state is making those investments now, because it is going to take a lot of stamina to get to that point. There's a lot of work that has to be done. There's a lot of issues that we have to cover. The BBCer, Biscayne Bay Southeastern Everglades Restoration Project, is not set for WRDA until 2028, right? So it's going to take long-term, you know, staying out there in advocacy to push that fresh water that's needed back to the coastal fringe, to redirect those heavy flows in the rainy season, and redirect those flows of 100,000 acre feet or 325,000 gallons a year from North Biscayne Bay, and reroute that water down the spine, down to get it to where it needs to be, right? Where the park wants that water, and not have all those nutrients and other factors coming through and creating flood protection issues. There's a lot that's ahead of us. It's going to take time. There's a lot of work in the central flow path we have to do in Western Everglades. And there needs to be a long-term concerted focus on delivering this project as well. We're gonna, all of us, right, from state, federal, from the White House through the governor's office, through every municipality here, is going to have to stay focused that we have the financial resiliency and stamina as well. We talk about these are the golden years. I think we're going to need to get to the platinum years, right? And we're going to need to get there because things are costing more, and that it is worth it. It is worth it. As you said, for my children, I got a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old. I want them to be able to have that opportunity to enjoy those things that I enjoyed growing up here on the water. We have a long way to go with figuring out what that end plan is going to be. And we need to have the ability and flexibilities to store water on the landscape, to filter it and provide for those natural resources. I have photographs from Irma of what it looks like when infrastructure and fresh water are not available, right? Things die. Right. And it's one side of the road, all the mangroves are dead because of no fresh water. On the other side, they're green. Right. And it is the basis of a one water for Everglades, for Miami-Dade County, for Biscayne Bay that we have to get through. And it's still very, very early in that process.
And I'm glad you brought up One Water because, you know, we've been talking all morning about Biscayne Bay and our resource, but our water supply is completely linked to Biscayne Bay and the aquifer. And that's why land use is critically important. And, you know, having worked with the district and the Army Corps of Engineers on SERP projects and advocating to get Biscayne Bay coastal wetlands done, and then BBC, and now hearing that there's going to be more delays. This is where advocacy comes in. This is why we had to build this coalition for things like that, because these folks need to hear from us. The only way, and I found this out, and Commissioner, I know you've been working with the Corps too, the only way to get the Corps to change their mission or their path or speed things up is not yelling at the colonel. That's not going to work. You go to Congress and we move our delegation and we give them the tools we need. Now we have an economic study. We have a lot of things that we didn't have before. We're actually, that we can show that we're committed as a community to really protect what we have, because it's incredibly precious. I know I'm preaching to the choir and we're right before lunch, which is the toughest panel to be on. But in one word, what gives you hope for Bay restoration? Starting with you, Mayor. One word. I know it's hard.
I'm with you, Madam Commissioner. Prioritize.
I mean, I was just gonna say leadership, and if I take 2 minutes, I mean, hearing the mayor and the commissioner that was talking about septic and sewer, the department, the state and local governments, they can put $1 billion into septic and sewer, but if residences don't hook up to the infrastructure once it's there, then you're never going to realize those benefits. And it's hard to go to a constituent and say, we got to do this, we'll do programs to help, but you may still be on the hook. But putting in programs, the state programs, but having leaders that are going out into the neighborhoods and explaining the benefits and everything, that's something that not easy to do. Seeing a lot of the local representatives, commissioners and mayors doing that is a big opportunity. Thank them for that.
That was many words. But you get a pass because of all the grant money. We love you. Commissioner.
One word that summarizes my hope for Biscayne Bay, the word would be us. The Bay belongs to all of us. And we continue to do what we're doing now and continue to keep relationships at all levels of government. There is a ton of hope for Biscayne Bay, but at the end of the day, it lands squarely on us.
I agree. My word is unity. The only way monumental projects will happen for Miami-Dade County on the area of Biscayne Bay, in the area of water quality, restoration, you name it, or transportation or housing, is if we are united in vision and able to have one voice and one ask.
Mine's stability, right? I think that there's just so much fluctuation out there and that what I see the fresh water bring. So for me, and I haven't heard this anywhere else, and I'll tell you, nothing to back it up, but it's a national security issue, fresh, clean water, right? And so I think it brings stability to our economy. I think it brings stability to the Bay. I think it brings a lot of facets, bringing that fresh water into the system.
Well, with that, we have to end before people start coming in with their lunch. So thank you so much, panelists. You are all leaders and have a special place in my heart.